All right, good evening, everybody. System Chalk here with what I'm hoping counts as the 8th episode. I'm actually feeling uncertain of that as soon as I hit record. But this should be Friday's entry, which will be the last for this week, and the second I've recorded since the game has become live. I don't know if Weather Factory will have put out exact sales numbers for this game, but it seems like the game is a success. And if nothing else, I know the rating on Steam is very positive. In fact, the actual title is overwhelmingly positive, but I believe it is 95% positive, and that is great to see. This is obviously a very special game, and one that, for my part at least, I would definitely love to see more games like this made. So that obviously doesn't happen without people's support, and obviously, the one thing I actually didn't say in the previous episode, which I should have, is I'm playing a copy of the game that was given to me from Weather Factory, and so I cannot claim to be a part. Well, I did buy one for a friend, but yeah, for my part, I can't claim to be someone who was a part of that success. So a lot of people definitely, I think deserve a bit of a thanks from me at least for helping show that games like this are viable and that there are people who want to see them. So we're trying to start, well, one, catalog, but two, also trying to get to grips with a few of our books. So here we've got a true and complete accounting of the Asclepian mysteries of the roots of the house. I'm going to be recovering at the Sweet Bones to get my element of the soul to work with that. And we've been talking with Mrs. Kill all day to try and get some memories that might be relevant towards, other activities. I'm particularly thinking of foresight so that we can get Denzel to open up the first floor of the Grand Ascent. Now, as far as Mrs. Kill is concerned, we'll definitely use her to unlock a room in the house, but it depends. There's a number of different things that can happen between now and that time that might change what room winds up getting opened and why. We didn't really take a look at Oriflamme, so in this case, this is just because, as nice as it would be to get calcite supplications, we don't have a tally value of 4. Okay, there's another regret. There it is in Camino Tizzer. Mrs. Kill, as every local gossip knows, came from France to marry Mr. Kill, but there's scant trace of the continent in her accent now. So we'll go back to a conversation. Now I need to be a little careful with how I plan out the rest of my day, but I think I should be able to get at least one book in. Alright, better now. So we're going to take the consider verb, and we are going to read the true and complete accounting of the Asclepian mysteries of the roots of the house. Descriptions of the Asclepian mysteries reproduced by one Riley Gressa from supposedly a much older text. It's unlikely to be genuine, but it makes reference to the house without walls and its wood right there in the prologue. So let's take the text. We'll add core. We'll add the solace memory. I can master this mystery, enough heart to match mystery heart. So this is going to take, I think, 2 or 3 minutes, probably 3. And that does keep me from being able to catalog a remaining book. Actually, sorry, that's not true. There's a reason why I left the Arab open. One, possibly because I may be able to read on Thursley's Ivories and Lovelies, but also because the Ava desk takes Grail, which means I can catalog a book there. And there's Gossip. So that doesn't quite help me, but still good to know. I think I'm going to... we'll keep talking, but I should start thinking about committing this fog to Mrs. Kill at some point. I'm not too worried about our ability to read books. There's a couple of situations where we can quite easily knock a couple down, and that's going to be Lady Ava's Repose and 108. In fact, one thing that I should have recognized was that if I get a fear, And I believe we did get one yesterday. I could have used the heart with the fear and the hourglass to be able to open up 108. So the memory revelation's also an interesting one. So remember how I was complaining about not being able to use the desk? Well, this is the sort of thing that I could use the desk for. I think my easy answer there is to hire someone. So in autumn, the orchard keepers come to sell their wares at Brandkrug. A shilling will buy one's help. So this is going to keep me from generating some memories for a little bit, but this is still helpful. Although the day may have been eaten up doing that. This is very obviously not an antique text. At the very least, it has been badly mutilated, but it contains substantial intriguing material, especially a persuasive comparison of the house without walls, without doors to the human body, with its many portals. All right, this is making things complicated. So here's how it's going to go. So first of all, we're going to talk with the orchard keeper about the revelations. So exalt with a memory. I can discuss a memory with my assistant. This will use up the memory, but boost the assistant's abilities for the rest of the day. We did say that if we got the satisfaction, we would read the text. So I'm going to follow up with that. And then we're almost there. Perhaps you provided Grail, but not enough to match Mystery Grail. If you're lucky, you might still succeed. And with that, we simply add the spice scales, redolent with decades of piquant passage. And now we've got 10 Grail. I can master this mystery. So the health probably winds up used at the sweet bones at this point, but we still have time to change our mind on that. Ooh, I really need to get... I think I may have actually run out of time to get everything I need done. So, I'm going to commit the lantern first. I can lend my assistant something to help, increasing their abilities. So I think what's going to happen is I'm going to be able to talk about the fog with Mrs. Kill, but I'm not going to be able to talk about the tryst. Manual labor, there's not much work on offer in Brandkrug, but I can find 6 pence worth of odd jobs. So if that happens, we can use the tryst for cataloging. The direction of death is down, the book explains. The peacock door has been considered a rent or an abrasion, but in some respects it is more like a mouth, if not a more treasured point of entry. Discussions of the doors include a rite which may conjure creatures through those doors, although key incantations are missing. So for that... Actually, here's one thing I'll do. I'll take the books that I've read, and I'm going to put those into the bedroom. So we got an impulse and weaving and not working. So that's going to be one that I can add to my my collection right away. So let's say we know the Alopoli work and the Asclepian mysteries give us impulse. I don't remember what Orchid Transfigurations a Feast gives us or the Seven Faces of Icarus. I can figure that out later, obviously. So I'm not quite ready to give up on the tryst yet. Talk about the weather. more useful than one might expect, especially in Britain. And here we will open up the Long Tower. So the Long Tower looks like it's been abandoned much longer than 7 years. In the nocturnal period, the inhabitants probably spent most of their time on the seaward side of the isle. I'll need help to restore the room above. And the book that we're reading, On Thursley's Ivories and Lovelies, Fiona Ayrshire recounts her visits in dreams to the Red Church in the Manses and her conversations with the names of the Grail. An hour, Ayrshire explains, may usually only have 7 names, but since the Thursleys, Ivories, and Lovelies, who usually comprise the Red Grail's names, are constantly attempting to devour one another and the names of other hours, that number fluctuates. So as expected, we were short. We're not going to be able to talk with Mrs. Kill about Tryst. So unfortunately, we don't get to unlock the floor on the Grand Descent, but this is a pretty useful room for us to unlock. But what I will do here is I will take my Tryst and I will catalog another book. This book was probably written around the time of Hush House's nocturnal period, after the turn of the century. If I examine it, I can learn more about what knowledge it might contain. And I rather suspect that I'm not going to be able... Oh, nope, we should be able to have our Arab back before too long. So yeah, let's take advantage of the weather while it lasts. If I try and talk with Mrs. Kill about... So if I say, take a memory, it's late. Another time? You can't speak with assistants at night. Make use of them quickly or let them go home. So in this case here, we needed 4 moon. So unlucky. I mean, it means that we weren't able to take advantage of the weather, but 4 moon isn't the most difficult thing to get. The Grand Descent is a nice to have, but I would say this room is a little more important to me right now. And Traveling at Night, Volume 3, The Annotated Dream Journals of Christopher Olopoli, sometimes called the only readable occultist. Literate, entertaining, bewildering. Lovelies are the freshest of the Grail's names. Lovelies, the freshest of the Grail's names, usually adopt the characteristics of whatever they devour, be it an ivory, a thirstly, or occasionally an entirely different kind of name. A practical application of the principle is described. The arts of resurgences and emergences, in the presence of a sufficiently potent Grail aspect, can be used to feed a pale mommet to its successor doll, creating something notably more avid. So that is the sort of thing. I don't have my notebook that I usually use for Book of Hours, but this is definitely something that you would want to pay attention to. So we have, in this case, the Pale Mommet. So it's a direct reference here. So resurgences and emergences, which I now have in my inventory. And if we combine resurgences, emergences, a pale mommet, and a bunch of Grail, those are at least the starting components for something bigger. Now, what do we need from something bigger? We don't know. We haven't tried it yet, but it's definitely an indicator that we have. It's an indicator that we have we have the beginnings of a recipe, is basically what I'm trying to say in an incredibly inelegant way. All right, so let's start committing some memories. So we'll start with weaving and not working. Use this lesson to acquire a new skill. This might be something that we can commit directly to the Tree of Wisdoms. And we'll do the same with resurgences and emergences, although this one we would also want to keep an eye on our Grail and Moth, because we would want to commit that to... we would want to level that up to 2 when the time comes. Okay. So, sunny days. This is a good example where, technically, if we waited for the sunny day, we would have been able to open this room. The way we did earlier, but it's neither here nor there. All right, weaving and not working. Valentine de Wolf. 2 heart, 1 moth. That can go to Birdsong or Bosk, so remembering that the game did recommend that we go down the Bosk path, something for me to keep in mind. Use this lesson to acquire a new skill. So underweaving and not working, if we give it to Birdsong, we can get core. If we give it to Bosk, we get health. So what endures? Cut a thread and the tapestry must be healed. Bosk renews the weave. Or cut a thread and the tapestry remains. Birdsong follows the thread. I kind of feel like we don't need either right now. I'm slightly more inclined to commit Bosk, but I know I said I was going to commit things as early as I can, but I'll maybe slightly adjust that. I will amend that to say I'll do it when it helps me achieve a when it helps me achieve a particular goal. So we've got a few different things to do today. I've got 2 Curia books and I think 3. No, not even. Yeah, more than 3. 3 Nocturnal, 1 Baronial, and 2 Curia books. Okay, so I suppose the first question would be, what does the Sunny Day get me? And if I can get Reverend Timothy, we could open the Long Tower. The problem is that I don't have a way to get Reverend Timothy. I could hire an orchard keeper, feed them some dandelion wine with the Sunny Day and the mirror scope to open up the bedroom. And then there's the sky, which is probably more exciting. Although with furs and feathers, I would still need to find... So this is a tricky one, because with furs and feathers, we've got 2. With Sunny, we've got 2. And with the astrolabe, we've got 5. So we have a real shot of being able to read the Fallen Cross, but we're not 100% there. Also, I need to read the description for the Long Tower. So Solomon's study. In 1818, the Very Reverend Solomon Husher became 3rd librarian of the Curia of the Isle. He took rooms in the Long Tower as his quarters. Husher's tastes were Spartan, although the Curia generally liked a little more luxury. No one ever quite dared to redecorate the place after his disappearance. So we've got some ink, perniculate, deadly, use gloves to read text produced with this pigment, and ink of power, sometimes considered an unsanctioned ink. We also have the pale desk, so Solomon Husher himself commissioned this from Lockwood Fen Boggu, blackened and half fossilized by centuries underwater. Here at this desk, he wrote his doomy allegory of winter and its romance with the sun. When he blotted the last word on his manuscript and rose from his work, the timber had turned pale as fresh-cut maple, or so the story goes. So this will accept lantern scale, sky, and winter. That's helpful because we could now add the Sunny Day. So this is an example. This is basically what allows me to read sky texts now. Right? So then, I could add health, although health doesn't provide sky. But now this means that health can be used to catalog books, which I like. So I think we still want to talk with Mrs. Kill because you never know what memories you're going to get. And I think in a pinch we will try to read a text. So I think what we'll do in this case is we will set aside the health. As for the rest of it, though, I think I'm trying to think if there's a situation... I don't think I can use any of these other ones. I was just thinking, we also probably want to try and read 108 if the... Oh, actually, there is one other thing I want. Okay, yes, so we're definitely going to use Mrs. Kill. I'm hoping we get an impulse. But for the rest of this... Oh, yes, sorry. So Mr. Kill would get me Sky, but I can't get Sky. I can't get Mr. Kill. So 2 Sky. Yeah, I don't think we're opening. I think we're opening a room that we want off of that. Yeah, so the best I can do here is take a flyer on one of the 6 Sky texts. So in this case, I'll set aside the Tryst to generate an impulse Oh, actually, for that, I'd potentially have to set aside another as well. So we'll start with the core and the FET for cataloging texts. Mrs. Kill stands ready to help. You always cheer me up, she says morosely. Alright, Mrs. Kill has seen more of the world than she usually lets on. Conversations with her yield the occasional surprise. So you may be wondering why I'm setting aside so many items here, and this is just because in order to level up resurgences and emergences, I'm going to need either a Grail or Moth to be able to level that up, and if I don't get that from a if I don't get that from a sorry, I'm trying to think of how to put it. If I don't get it from Conversations with Mrs. Kill, I am going to need to get it from a book. And then I would need one of my elements of the soul to be able to level that up. So this is one of the reasons why it's important for me to talk with Mrs. Kill right away. Whereas for the core and the FET, I know I'm not going to use either of them until I have a relevant text. So it's just sort of, I'm setting aside the things that I can afford to lose the most right now. So in this case, the Curia book, this book was probably written around the time of Hush House's Curia period, roughly the 1700s to 1800s. If I examine it, I can learn more about what knowledge it might contain. There was a question that somebody had asked previously, how did you know where to put one of the busts? And I can't remember what bust it was. I think it was in one of my Nocturnal beta videos. But this is a good example here. And this is why reading and rereading can be helpful. It's also why if you click on the text in this game, it'll go to your clipboard. I believe there is some indication that Weather Factory has noted how people would like the ability to take notes in-game. And so I think they'll also be adding a note writing feature in future. Although, as always, usually you want to buy and sort of play a game based on what's actually available to you as opposed to what you hope it will become in future. But as it says here in Solomon's study, in 1818, the Very Reverend Solomon Husher became third librarian of the Curia of the Isle. He took rooms in the Long Tower as his quarters. Husher's tastes were Spartan, although the Curia generally liked a little more luxury. No one ever quite dared to redecorate the place after his disappearance. Now later on, we see one of these environments here, the Grand Ascent second floor. By long tradition, each Baron Brandkrug had their image set in a niche in the Grand Ascent. Later, the Curia of the Isle continued the tradition for their librarians. Now, we're a little bit higher than where we need to be right now, but you can see that there are different indications for, different niches for each of the librarians. And we know now, having read this description, that the niches are in fact for putting their images inside the niches. And so in this case, I would know, where do we put Solomon Husher? Well, it says he was the third librarian, and so it stands to reason that he would go in the third slot. There it is in Camino Tizzer. Mrs. Kill, as every local gossip knows, came from France to marry Mr. Kill, but there's scant trace of the continent in her accent now. So we don't immediately have a use for Mrs. Kill in terms of unlocking another room. Our focus today is really about either reading books or advancing skills. But all right, we've got the Radical Measure gloss. So that's a 12 rows text. I'm actually going to change the order a little bit. So this is going to be for books that I can read. Let's say these are nice to have books. And then this will be the new too difficult pile. All right. Next book. I am kind of curious what we get if we commit resurgences and emergences. So birth and death are only directions. Between the two we find a crossroads. So, Grail and Moth, the gods from stone made a law that the keys of dream cannot be held or owned. The time of stone is past, but the keys remain, so the holders of these keys can only be the 7 legions, whose crime has set them outside the law, but the legions serve an hour of Grail and Moth. When the last remnants of the gods from stone were consumed, the law will be consumed with them. Bosk is the wisdom of change, or preservation. Moth and Grail... The gods from stone made a law that the keys of dream cannot be held or owned. The time of stone is past, but the keys remain. So the holders of these keys can only be the 7 legions, whose crime has set them outside the law, and the legions serve an hour of Moth and Grail. When the last remnants of the gods from stone are renewed, the law will be renewed with them. Preservation is the wisdom of renewal. So this is a little different from before, but this is, again, there's never a right or a wrong way to play a game, but I do think there is something really neat with the Tree of Wisdoms, which is not obvious. So we're going to read this text again, and this time we're going to read it a little more slowly so we can see exactly the difference. So if we go for Bosk, so maybe we'll start by saying, what is Bosk? So the lore of the primeval wood. Grail and Moth. The gods from stone made a law that the keys of dream cannot be held or owned. The time of stone is past, but the keys remain. So the holders of these keys can only be the 7 legions, whose crime has set them outside the law. But the legions serve an hour of Grail and Moth. When the last remnants of the gods of stone are consumed, the law will be consumed with them. Bosk is the wisdom of change. The gods from stone, Moth and Grail. The gods from stone made a law that the keys of dream cannot be held or owned. The time of stone is past, but the keys remain. So the holders of these keys can only be the 7 legions, whose crime has set them outside the law, and the legions serve an hour of Moth and Grail. When the last remnants of the gods from stone are renewed, the law will be renewed with them. Preservation is the wisdom of renewal. So we may not directly know exactly what hour is being referred to here. Again, this is a question in terms of, are you like, how familiar are you with the secret histories? How many books have you read? So on and so forth. But there's clearly 2 very different outcomes that are being described here. One, we have the remnants of the gods from stone being consumed. The other, we have the remnants of the gods from stone being renewed. These are contradictory, and committing one sort of closes off the possibility of the other. So while we may want one of these elements of the soul, we do also face the reality that it's not. Sorry, again, I'm trying to think of the right way to put this. Like, there are other considerations, let's say, depending on how invested you are in the setting. You may have something at say. I certainly do. Maybe not in this particular case, but in the case of the setting, there are some things that I've read in here which make me say, okay, you know what? I'm not really comfortable with what I'm reading here. And I've actually been reluctant to assign, even if it winds up giving me something that I need. So I am interested in seeing where this all goes. But yeah, just as a kind of a heads up, even those details, like it is a little bit more reading than what some of the other items will provide, but it's worth taking the time to read for that very reason. Okay, now on to the task at hand. I can get that second level of resurgences and emergences because we now have satisfaction, which will give me the Grail. We'll continue to talk with Mrs. Kill, but I can stop cataloging for a bit, and I can also move the Arab now up to cataloging territory because I have what I need to be able to level up resurgences and emergences. Okay, The Crossing to Noon. The mystic Garcia Sauri gives a picturesque account of the adventures of Franklin Bancroft, Prince of Wines, and Ava de Wolf, the Pale Lady, on their way to the hidden island of Noon. So this is a almost... So if we'd still be short even if we had the foggy day. But this is one of the ones which are sort of an aspirational text for us, let's say. So let's get resurgences and emergences leveled up right now. So we'll add the lesson, we'll add memory satisfaction, and here we'll add Arab. There's always more to learn. And if we're lucky, we'll get a fear from Mrs. Kill so that we can read 108. But if we don't get that, I won't feel too sad about it. Okay, Memory Solace, so this is also Sky and Heart. I do also have the option of brewing some tea. I'm going to need that eventually. So we'll start with the baronial book. We'll go baronial curia and then nocturnal. I think those are probably, that's the order of text that I'm most likely to read. And I know we're at time, but let's see if we can maybe finish out the day today. I know yesterday's episode, I was kind of trying to find my feet again, so I figure at the very least I can maybe try and... We're getting some good memories here, just not quite the memories that I need for my current circumstances. On imperfections. I am going to move Traveling at Night Volume 2 over here. Yeah, a lot of 6 knock texts. So whatever happens with Consider, it's gonna have it's not gonna be cataloging. We'll have to do that at the Pale desk. We'll wait for the end of the day to do that. Although I suppose I did say I was gonna take a flyer on one of the Sky texts. Yeah. The funny thing is, the more I think of it, it's really not that important that I take a flyer on a Sky text during a sunny day, because technically all I need is a memory storm, and I can do that. So I have this weird feeling that I actually need to use the weather when it appears, but there are actually quite a few weather cards that wind up being identical to, or not identical, but like the thing that makes them special is the same as something that, you know, I'd toss away under normal circumstances. So, but still, we'll see what the day brings. We're not quite done yet. I think it may make a little more sense to catalog something, though. I'm just taking a look at what I have, like what my options are in terms of the other rooms, and I suppose with Mrs. Kill, if I've got the core and like something like a Storm or Solace, we could open the Gloomy Room. So there are a couple of things that we can get with Mrs. Kill, but overall, I think it'd be a good idea to get an idea of what kind of what kind of books I can read, so that I can get a better idea of what the... So the reason I like cataloging early, in addition to being able to like satisfy the guests, one reason why I like cataloging books earlier is it allows me to go in informed as far as the weather is concerned. So if we wind up with, you know, like a storm or hail, let's say, I can build my turn sort of around that, and potentially be in a better position so far as just so far as being able to get the largest number of books read. What I do tend to notice is that if I find I'm stagnating, so like here I've got a lot of sky texts that I would like to read but can't, what I notice is usually I just need one good day in terms of the weather, and then that winds up letting me read the book that's of interest. And once that happens, that gives me the skill that I need to be able to do the remaining steps. But for now, we didn't get what we needed. So in this case, I'm going to catalog the Curia text. So this book was probably written around the time of Hush House's Curia period, roughly the 1700s to 1800s. And so again, as an example here, like if I had Exorcism for Girls, it's okay. So in this case, let's say I had Hail, so Hail gives 3 edge. I can combine that with Arab, so that brings it up to 4 edge. And then I could add the Barrette, so that would bring me up to 5 edge. And I'd be sort of taking my life in my hands on that, but I do have the Arab element of the soul, and that would mean it's a little more likely that I'm able to see that one through. Like that's an example. You know what? We could do that with the. Nope, apparently not. But like that's an example of how, if I've got a couple of. Like, so if I have something, like if I have an edge text like that, I can make an informed decision at the start of the day in terms of how I'm going to set things up. And if I have a bunch of uncatalogued books, sort of like up here, like these may or may not be relevant to the weather that I wind up getting. And so as a result, it can be a little bit more difficult to decide what my next step is. So the last example that I'll take is right now, I do not have anything that's relevant to nectar. So as a result, I'm not going to be using this nectar to read a book. And that's fine. There are other things that I can do with Grail. There are other things that I can do with nectar. I don't think we have any Grail tasks because I would have gotten Mrs. Kill to do them already, but it never hurts to take a peek. Yeah, so all of our Grail and Nectar tasks have been finished, but let's say that one of the, so if it's Fekri's Herbery, we're done. But let's say it was a 4 Nectar text. Well, that gets a lot more interesting because I can then use my health. I can combine that with the Mortar and Pestle, and I can combine that with the Rain, and all of a sudden now I've got a Nectar text, which I've read. And the nice thing about some of the Nectar texts is that they may give me something that allows me to do gardening, which now means that my health is going to be used in a very different way from how it would have been prior to me finding that catalog. And that comes purely from me knowing what my books are. So in some situations when you see me sort of choosing between opening a room and cataloging a book, it does sometimes come down to that. How badly do I feel that I need to open up the room? Sometimes the room will give me access to a workstation that I need, and sometimes it just gives me access to other books. And in this particular case here, I do need more books rather than, like, what I mean by that is I need to know about the books that I have as opposed to getting new ones. And that's sort of informing the decisions that I'm making right now. But yeah, for the next episode, I suspect it's going to be a lot of cataloging for the existing ones. I will wind up getting Mrs. Kill anyway, so we will at least get the ball rolling on that. But I suspect for the rest of the day, it's going to be a question of me cataloging the remaining texts. One decision that I would make in terms of cataloging, now that I know that it's the Rain, I would maybe keep the Arab and the Health as the last two. And the reasoning for that would be these are the ones that are most directly tied to the Rain. And in fact, the Arab is not that big of a deal because we already know we can get Mrs. Kill, we can already get the Arab, and so like two Grail isn't really going to move the needle that much for us because it's something that we've grown accustomed to, as opposed to say Sky and Lantern, which really we get if the random random generation smiles. But anyways, I hope you have enjoyed the playthrough up to this point. I have I've sort of fallen behind on my commitment to commit things immediately to the Tree of Wisdoms, but it's partly just because right now these two existing ones don't give me something that I really needed right now. I am going to commit them, but at the moment what I'm really looking for in terms of the Tree of Wisdoms are the elements of the soul that I'm missing. So Fost, Wist, this would be Fost, Wist, and Metal. So we've got Health, Arab, Fet, Core, Trist. We would need 3 more. So yeah, Fost, Wist, and Metal. But yeah, so if I get the opportunity to claim those, I'm happy. I'm happy to get those, but the others are just a nice to have. If I start getting to a point where I've got crafting stations that I can use to level up my abilities, that might be when I start, thinking about committing a few more. But right now, the idea of having an extra element of the soul, it just gives me another action, and it's not that expensive for me to pay for a tuppence at the Sweet Bones and renew my weary elements of the soul. So thank you everybody for watching. Again, I said that before, just because there's a lot of new people now. I will take the time to just say that the way that this series works, I upload videos Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The weekends will be dedicated for... So the overall plan is that this series will have a half-hour episode or longer, in this case, every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then I upload my Twitch VODs usually on the days when I don't have a dedicated episode. I've been trying to push the Book of Hours stuff a little bit more aggressively, so there have been 2 episodes a day, just because the game was about to be released. But the game's out now. There's lots of YouTubers. Well, hopefully there's lots of YouTubers covering it. But I also have a pretty substantial backlog. There's more than a few sort of 10-hour streams of me playing this game. So I feel that there's quite a bit of Book of Hours content here now. And then at some point, the reason why the Tuesday is a day off is that I did have an ongoing series which finished, and I would like to bring back at some point. It's not Book of Hours related, but I wanted to keep that day open just so I can continue to upload the streams. And a nice practical benefit of that is that my live streams are Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If I leave Tuesday, Saturday, Sunday open, it means that I can keep the pace of YouTube uploads going. So just I figured I would do that PSA for people who are watching this, many months from now. I know this was a pointless digression, but hopefully that's informative for the people who are new to the channel. In any case, we will see you on Monday. Thank you for watching. Take care.